I'm Emilio Pasmino, and this is the largemouth bass. Today we're out here fishing in a canal in Florida for exotic fish. However, to my surprise, the first two fish we got are actually native predators. In a minute, I'm going to show you guys what we got, but first I want to see if I can catch at least one exotic. So the first fish I have with me is the Florida gar. Now, I've already done a full episode on the Florida gar back in season 1. I'm going to leave the link in the description if you guys want to check that video out. So I'm just going to briefly talk about this guy. This is much smaller than the one I caught previously. This one's only about a foot long, but he's still got those impressive teeth that I want to show you. Let's see if we can open up his mouth. Look at that. Like little needles. You can see the tongue there too. I love how this guy has like a stripe pattern that goes all the way into his eye. Like it starts here and then continues onto the eye. I find that really cool. I'm gonna go ahead and release this guy real quick because I want to show you guys the main star of today's video. So we're gonna let him go. Back into the water. See him? Right little there. Now to the second fish, the largemouth bass. Here in my hands is by no means a state record or anything, but it is still a very impressive specimen nonetheless. They can grow a lot bigger than this. I believe that the world record right now is currently at about 22 pounds. For reference, I would say this guy's only about 2 pounds. So you can imagine how big that fish is. The largemouth bass is named so because he has a very big mouth. Let me show you guys. When it opens its mouth underwater, it sucks in water like a vacuum and potential prey. So it can hunt things that are much larger than you would think. You can identify the largemouth bass because the mouth will actually extend a little bit past the rear end of the eye. This is how we know it's a largemouth bass. This can help distinguish it from other species of bass, like the smallmouth bass, who obviously has a smaller mouth. Now, since we are in Florida, this guy would be the Florida subspecies. If you don't know the range, it's kind of hard to tell between the northern and the Florida bass because they look very similar physically. The difference are mainly in the habitat preference and the feeding styles. However, what I do know is that the Florida bass grows much faster than the northern subspecies. Therefore, they are much more sought after by pro anglers. Before I let him go, I want to compare him with another type of bass that is commonly found in these canals. You guys remember the peacock bass? I tried to get them about the same size, but this guy's a little bit bigger. So now you can see that the largemouth bass has a much larger mouth than the peacock bass. The peacock bass is more colorful, as is typical with animals from the South American rainforest. And then you have this guy who's more of a solid black color on top and layer on the bottom. And this guy with like the green and the red fins, and then you have the characteristic ring on the tail. This isn't actually a true bass comparison because the peacock bass is not really a bass. It's a cichlid. It's just called a bass because they look similar. It is still a very interesting comparison nonetheless to see these guys head to head. Last time I mentioned that although the peacock bass is a non-native species, it was purposely released to control the numbers of other invasive fish. But what effect do they have on the largemouth population? Surprisingly, none at all. Largemouth bass are versatile hunters, eating anything that they can fit in their huge mouths, including worms, crayfish, frogs, and even small birds. On the other hand, peacock bass feed almost exclusively on other fish, and since they are about the same size, they tend not to eat each other. I've even seen them swimming side by side. Well, now we're going to let these guys go. First, the largemouth bass. Till next time. And now the peacock.